Dating violence is a serious issue that affects many teens. In the United States, 1 out of every 3 teens will experience physical, sexual, or emotional abuse from someone they're dating. That's why it's important to spread awareness about teen dating violence. This includes talking about healthy relationships and what respect, trust, and open communication looks like in a romantic relationship, like we did in our last module, and spreading awareness about teen dating violence and how to spot signs of abuse in a relationship. It also includes knowing how and where to get help. These are some of the topics we will cover in this module. At the beginning of a relationship, a person might not think abusive behaviors are a big deal, but they are. Relationships that are based on power and control instead of equity and respect are not healthy. Behaviors like possessiveness, insults, jealous accusations, yelling, humiliation, pulling hair, pushing, or other negative abusive behaviors are all, at their root, exertions of power. Abuse is always a choice. Everyone deserves to be respected, and there's no excuse for abuse of any kind, ever. So here is an example of how abusive behaviors at a beginning of a relationship can be seen as minimal, but that they escalate over time. Teen dating violence is a pattern of behavior that includes physical, emotional, verbal, or sexual abuse used by one person in an intimate relationship to exert power and control over another. Although it is recognized as a pattern of behavior, that does not mean the first instance of abuse is not dating violence. Rather, this recognizes that dating violence usually involves a series of abusive behaviors over a course of time. Dating violence can happen to anyone, regardless of age, race, gender, sexual orientation, or background. And although drugs and alcohol and other substances sometimes play a role in these abusive behaviors because they affect a person's judgment and behavior, they do not excuse abuse or violence. Alternatively, if a person uses drugs or alcohol, it does not mean they deserve abuse or assault either. There are many different types of dating violence. Physical abuse is any intentional, unwanted contact with you or something close to your body, or any behavior that causes or has the intention of causing you injury, disability, or death. Although this abusive behavior may not always cause physical pain or leave a bruise, it's still unhealthy and should always be taken seriously. Some examples of physical abuse include scratching, punching, biting, strangling, choking, or kicking, throwing items at a partner like a phone, book, shoe, or plate, pulling hair, pulling or pushing a partner, or forcibly grabbing their clothing, threatening to use or using a gun, knife, box cutter, bat, mace, or other weapon against their partner, touching any part of their partner without their permission or consent, grabbing their face to make them look at them, and preventing a partner from leaving or forcing them to go somewhere. Emotional abuse includes non-physical behaviors such as threats, insults, constant monitoring or checking in, excessive texting, humiliation, intimidation, isolation, or stalking. Some examples of behaviors that qualify as emotional or verbal abuse include calling a partner names or putting them down, telling them what to do or what to wear, yelling or screaming at them, or intentionally embarrassing them in front of others, or starting rumors about them, preventing them from seeing or communicating with friends or family, damaging personal property, using online communities or communications to control, intimidate, or humiliate their partner, blaming their abusive or unhealthy behaviors on their partner or their actions, being jealous of outside of relationships or accusing their partner of cheating, stalking their partner or their loved ones, threatening to harm their partner, their pets, or other people in their life, or threatening to harm themselves to keep them from ending the relationship. Sexual abuse refers to any behavior that pressures or coerces someone to do something sexually that they don't want to do. Everyone has the right to decide what they do or don't want to do sexually, and not all sexual assaults are violent attacks. Most victims of sexual assault know their assailant, and people of all genders and sexualities can be victims or perpetrators of sexual abuse. This includes people who are married, dating, or just acquaintances. Examples of sexual abuse include any unwanted kissing or touching, refusing to use condoms or restricting someone's access to birth control, or preventing them from using protection against sexually transmitted infections, Sexual contact with someone intoxicated from drugs or alcohol, unconscious, asleep, or otherwise unable to give clear and informed consent, threatening, pressuring, or otherwise forcing someone to have sex or perform sexual acts, and using sexual insults towards someone else. Sexual abuse is never the victim's fault. Just because someone didn't say no or doesn't resist unwanted sexual advances doesn't mean that they consent. It's up to each of us to understand consent and to communicate and respect the boundaries of our intimate partners without exception. Financial abuse often operates in more subtle ways than other forms of abuse, but it can be just as harmful to those who experience it. No one has the right to use money or how you choose to spend it to control your actions or decisions, and no one should control your ability to work. Examples of financial abuse include giving a partner an allowance or monitoring what they buy, depositing their paycheck into an account they can't access, forbidding a partner from working or limiting the hours that they do work, refusing to provide their partner with money, food, rent, medicine, or clothing, and giving their partner presents or paying for things with the expectations of something in return. Digital dating abuse is the use of technologies like texting and social media to bully, harass, stalk, or intimidate a partner. This behavior is often a form of verbal or emotional abuse conducted online. All communication in a healthy relationship is respectful, whether in person, online, or over the phone. It's never okay for a partner to use words or actions to harm their partner, lower their self-esteem, or manipulate them. Examples of digital abuse include telling a partner who they can or cannot follow or be friends with on social media, sending their partner negative, insulting, or threatening messages or emails, using social media to track their partner's activities, insulting or humiliating their partner in their posts online, including posting unflattering photos or videos, sending, requesting, or pressuring their partner to send unwanted, explicit photos or videos, sexts, or otherwise compromising messages, stealing or pressuring their partner to share their account passwords, constantly texting their partner or making them feel like they can't be separated from their phone, and looking through their partner's phone or checking up on their pictures, texts, and phone records. And remember, all abusive relationships are based on power and control. So all of those behaviors that were talked about on the last couple of slides, at their root, involve gaining power, being the dominant partner in that relationship so that they can gain control of their partner. Some behaviors that might indicate that abuse is occurring in a relationship include blaming one partner for their harmful actions, making excuses for their abusive actions, and/or minimizing their abusive behavior like it's not a big deal. For example, partners that use the phrase, "I wouldn't have to do this if he would just take out the trash or clean the dishes or just do what I say." Using that phrase is a big warning sign of abusive relationships. Controlling or isolating one partner from their family and friends, controlling everything their partner does, like what they wear, where they can go, and/or what they can do, or pressuring and forcing a partner to do things they don't want to do using intimidation or threats. So just like in that video, that's not love video, if they use the phrase, "If you really love me," or "If you loved me, you would do X, Y, and Z." Communicating in a way that is hurtful, threatening, insulting, or demeaning. For example, one partner constantly criticizing the other, calling them names, or making them feel bad about themselves, whether in public or in private. One partner disrespecting the feelings, thoughts, decisions, opinions, or physical safety of the other, and one partner physically hurting their partner in a way like hitting, slapping, choking, pushing, or shoving. Some early warning signs of abuse, or what we like to call red flags that abuse will escalate further into the relationship, would be not respecting boundaries, even those little boundaries at the beginning of a relationship. For example, if I had a partner at my house and I asked them not to snoop through the mail that was sitting on my counter, that's a boundary I've set, and if they do it anyway, that's violating that boundary. Being too serious too fast, so saying "I love you" too quickly into a relationship. Being possessive or extremely jealous or exhibiting controlling behavior, again, telling a partner what to do or what to wear or who they can hang out with. Attempting to manipulate or guilt trip their partner. So using that phrase, here it comes up again, using that phrase, if you loved me or if you really loved me, you would do whatever it is they wanted you to do. Being constantly moody or agitated, so exhibiting anger issues or losing their temper quickly or easily. being disrespectful to other people or isolating their partner from their family and friends, and being abusive to animals. So, can you pick out some of the red flags in this scenario? With teen dating violence and abusive relationships, there really is a cycle that these types of relationships go through. There are 3 phases to this cycle of violence. That first phase is that honeymoon phase. This is when things are really good. The abuser is treating their partner really well. They might be very attentive to them, getting them gifts, showing them lots of love. But this can also be the phase where the abuser apologizes for their behavior in that explosion phase, or that active violence phase. From the honeymoon phase, the relationship shifts into the tension building phase. So this is when the partner that's being abused senses tension in their abuser. They sense that something is going to happen. And so in a sense, to prevent that explosion or prevent moving to that explosion or active violence phase, they will walk on eggshells. They'll be very conscious of what they say, what they do, so as not to agitate or upset their partners. So they're placating their abuser. During this phase, there might be verbal, mental, and/or emotional abuse as well. The last phase is the explosion phase. This is that active violence, whether it be physical, sexual, verbal, mental, emotional, digital, financial, or even stalking behaviors. In a long-term abusive relationship, the honeymoon phase is eliminated from the cycle of violence, and this cycle consists of just the tension-building phase and the explosion phase. So they're only cycling between those 2 phases. Now, the easy thing to say would be, okay, someone's experiencing abuse, why don't they just leave the abusive relationship? But it is a lot harder for victims of abuse to leave their abuser for many reasons. This TED Talk that you're going to watch here now, featuring Leslie, who was a victim of domestic violence, is going to talk about her story of domestic violence and why it is so hard to leave an abuser. While we're watching this video, I want you to practice what we've been talking about so far and pick out some early warning signs of abuse in Leslie's relationship that she mentions, as well as some of the risk factors Leslie talks about of her partner that would indicate that her partner potentially was going to abuse her. Some of the early warning signs that Leslie mentioned in the video that abuse would occur in the relationship was the seduction and charm of the victim. At the very beginning of the relationship, she mentions that he loved everything about her. He loved that she was smart. He complimented on how passionate she was about her job and about helping teenage girls. And he really idolized her and put her on a pedestal. He made her feel like she was the dominant partner in the relationship. She also mentioned that he isolated her from her family and friends. He came home one day, told her he quit his job, and then he wanted to move out into the country, away from her family and friends. Lastly, he said "I love you" too quickly into the relationship. Some of the risk factors of Leslie's partner that would indicate his potential for being an abuser was that he was himself abused by his stepfather as a child. He also made the rash decision to quit his dream job to move to the country with Leslie, very much out of the blue, and then introduced the threat of violence by buying guns. She mentioned he had bought 3 guns and he kept them in various places, but many of them were located within the house. So why do victims stay? The reality is, victims know it is very dangerous to leave their abusive relationship, as 70% of violence happens after a long-term relationship has ended. So how did Leslie eventually leave her partner? First, she made a safety plan. More on this in a few minutes. But second, she broke the silence. Abuse thrives in silence because it's based on power and control. If we think of teen dating violence, 2 out of 3 teens who experience teen dating violence will not tell anyone about it. So Leslie told everyone she was being abused. Her neighbors, her coworkers, strangers she ran into, family, her friends. But discussing relationship abuse with someone who is actively experiencing an abusive situation is never easy. While every situation is unique, there are several basic ways to facilitate affirming conversations that meet survivors where they're at. It's important to be supportive and listen to that victim of abuse. It will be difficult for them to talk about the abuse, but telling survivors what they can and cannot do will further isolate and disempowerment. So the first priority should be to support them with what they need and let them make their own decisions. You also want to be non-judgmental and respect their decisions, even if you don't agree with them. There might be many reasons why they might stay in an abusive relationship, or they might leave and return to the relationship several times. But experiencing guilt or shame from family and friends not only widens the gap between their support system, but also further expands the isolation tactic their abusive partner may already be perpetuating in the relationship. You can also acknowledge that they're in a difficult and scary situation. Let them know the abuse is not their fault and reassure them that they are not alone and that there's help and support available, including from yourself. Remember, you cannot rescue them. It might be difficult to watch someone you care about get hurt, but ultimately they are the only ones with the right to make a decision about what to do. But it's important to provide support even if you don't agree with the decisions they make, like staying in an abusive relationship. Remember, abuse is all about power and control, and deciding for them what they should do or what they are going to do can only add to the disempowerment they are already experiencing. Encourage them to participate in activities with family and friends. Help them identify and build support networks to help them recognize alternatives to their abusive situations that they're experiencing. This can also help build the confidence that they might need to leave a relationship. Lastly, encourage them to talk to people who can offer further help. If we think about our school community, any trusted adult is a good person to go to. Teacher, mentor, coach, especially counselors. Those are great resources to encourage them to go to talk to for further help. However, if you think your friend is in physical danger, but they don't want to seek any help, go ahead and tell a trusted adult. If you think that person is at serious risk, tell them you are going to go to an adult and then do it, even if they don't like it. There are also some national and local resources that we can use for help. There's the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, but more locally, we have 360 Communities Lewis House, which is located in Dakota County. This resource provides safe housing, support, and advocacy to survivors of domestic abuse and sexual assault. In Minnesota, we have Cornerstone, which provides support for people who have experienced trauma as a result of domestic or sexual violence. As part of Cornerstone, we also have the Minnesota Domestic Violence Hotline, or the Day One Hotline. One other thing we can do to help our loved ones get out of an abusive relationship is to help them develop a safety plan. A safety plan is a plan of action for the victim to help reduce the risk of being hurt by their abuser if they try to leave them. Each plan is specific to the victim and their situation. Some tips for creating a safety plan for when you're at home or at school would be to change your routine. Change the hallways you take or the routes you take to work or to school. Change your school schedule. Switch around what classes you're taking. Visit a new place your abuser doesn't go to. You don't want to frequent the places that your abuser knows that you like to go to. Rather, visit new places that your abuser doesn't know about. Only let those you trust know your school schedule and routine. So only tell those people in your very close inner circle what your schedule or routine is so that your abuser does not find out. There are also some tips for when you are online, especially when using social media. Posts on social media are never truly private, no matter your settings. Once it's online, it's no longer under your control. But be protective of your personal information and remember that phone numbers, addresses, handles, and personal details like birth date, schools you attended, employers, and photos with landmarks may make it easier for someone to reach you. Make sure you change your social media passwords immediately after you're leaving an abuser. Make your accounts private or delete them. So check your social media settings to make sure your privacy settings are strict and disable the ability for other people to tag you in their photos or posts. Similarly, don't post information about people without their consent. You could jeopardize their safety or the safety of others. It's important to set boundaries and limits and ask people not to post personal information, photos, or check-ins you aren't comfortable with. So disabling those settings and turning off particularly your location settings will help make it harder for someone to find you. So that's what you're going to do now, is create your own safety plan, which can be found on page 9 of your relationship packet.